Hey guys, Richard Dawkins here. Jesus Christ is the Lord of fiction. Oh, you hear that? That's the sound of people getting offended. Oh, and you hear that? That's the sound of me not giving a fuck. Nah, I'm just playing. This is all in good fun. Now, even clarifying that I'm not trying to offend anyone, I know I'm still gonna get a lot of shit for this video, so I might as well provide a disclaimer just to cover my ass. To all the Christians and other religious people in the audience, let me make one thing very clear. If you are religious, I have nothing against you as a person and I do respect your beliefs. I'm not trying to talk down to you, I'm not trying to call you stupid, and I'm not trying to get you to change your beliefs or abandon your faith. I'm simply trying to explain to you from my perspective why my beliefs don't exactly comply with yours. So if you believe in God, that's alright with me. But even with that disclaimer, I know that this video is going to get me into some real hot water. Religion is a lot like politics. No matter what you say, someone is bound to get pissed off. And I've just learned to accept that. I can handle the occasional mean comment or two, as long as I know that the majority of people are at least trying to be civil about it. So without further ado, I now present to you why I personally am not religious and why I commonly refer to myself as an atheist. Alright, time to get offensive. Let me give you a little backstory. Now, ever since I was a young little squirt, I've always been a strong believer in rational thinking and logical reasoning, and so the idea of believing in an all-powerful supernatural being never really appealed to me. Even back when I considered myself a Christian, the idea of God never fully resonated with me. There were just so many questions I had about life and our existence in general that the faith either couldn't answer or neglected to inform me. What is the point of life? Where did the universe come from? Why is it called menstruating if it happens to a woman? If God is an all-loving being, then why does he send people to a place like hell? And the most interesting question of them all, do we really have free will?
I don't need sleep, I need answers.
It's questions like these, along with many others, that really push me towards the other end of the ideological spectrum. And of course, whenever you attempt to ask someone in the church these questions, their response is almost always, God works in mysterious ways, which is pretty much the equivalent of, shut the fuck up, stop asking questions. And at that point, you lose my ability to take your arguments seriously. Even as a Christian, I found some of this stuff hard to believe. You're really gonna tell me that one man was able to single-handedly collect 2 of every species of animal on Earth and round them up on a boat during a worldwide flood? I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to do a little better than that. But I guess if you really think about it, the idea of religion does make some modicum of sense, at least from an objective standpoint. Human beings are naturally inclined to try to explain things we can't answer, and religion is just the tool we use to fill in those gaps of information that we haven't figured out yet. We often use religion as a means to explain the unexplainable. It's what's known as the God of the gaps mentality. The idea that I don't understand something, therefore God did it. But when you rely on that mentality to explain everything you don't understand, you lose your ability to think critically as well as your passion to learn new things. And in my humble opinion, that's not always the best logic to arrive at. I'm not trying to claim that religion is necessarily wrong or feeding people false information. I'm just offering a piece of advice in general. It's better to not know something at all rather than to be fed the wrong information or to jump to your own conclusion without any sustainable evidence. And know before you say it, the Bible is not a form of sustainable evidence for God. That's like saying that Hitler's manifesto was proof that Hitler was a good man or what he was doing made sense. It's not exactly the most fair or unbiased source in the world, you dig? It's called circular reasoning, using your own evidence to support your own claims. And that's not how information works. So I know you're asking, well, if you don't believe in God, then how did we get here? You can't just get something from nothing, someone had to put us here. Well, let me fill you in, smart guy. I'm not exactly sure who originally devised this theory, but it's one that makes a lot of sense to me. I believe that the universe has always existed in some way, shape, or form, and that there was nothing there to create it. After all, Newton's first law does state that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It just takes a different form.
Newton's third law, dumbass.
Once the Big Bang took place and all the stars and planets formed, that was the catalyst that allowed for the creation of life. I'm not trying to argue that this is a perfect theory regarding how we got here, but it's definitely one that doesn't contain a lot of plot holes. Following the introduction of the first single-celled organism, life continued to evolve gradually over billions of years until human beings inevitably came into the picture via natural selection. Do you see what profound discoveries you can come across once you learn to question your sources and start thinking for yourself? In my opinion, life is nothing more than the product of consciousness, which comes from the brain. Without a brain, we would simply be lifeless hunks of flesh and bone utterly devoid of purpose. It sounds nihilistic and kind of callous, but that just seems like the most sound explanation, at least from my perspective. But I'm made in God's image. What, did God have an eating disorder or something? Despite having a few holes in the theory of evolution, I find it a lot easier to believe that humanity developed gradually over an extended period of time, Rather than thinking we were created by an all-powerful being who defies the laws of physics and created the Earth in the span of 7 days. Evolution may not be a flawless explanation for life, but in my opinion it makes a lot more sense than creationism. Here's a little lesson, not just for religious people, but people in general. Don't believe everything you read. Just because the Bible states that the Earth is 6,000 years old doesn't make it a valid claim. After all, carbon dating exists for a reason. I know it's important for some of you to remain loyal to your faith, but that doesn't mean that everything about your faith should be taken 100% literally. And besides, if we do have free will, wouldn't God want you to think for yourself and not just spout off everything that comes from a book? But I can look past all that. I could forgive all of the points I brought up previously and still subscribe to a faith. But the thing that really turns me off about religion is the concept of an afterlife. Specifically the afterlife that awaits you when you don't comply with the rules of the faith. Now, I've tried to remain diplomatic for the majority of this discussion, but let me just say outright that the idea of hell and eternal damnation is utterly absurd and ridiculous to me. Just think about it for a second, guys. The idea of eternal and never-ending punishment. Suffering that is infinite. Pain that never ends. Now, this may just be my opinion, but even the most loathsome and despicable people to ever walk this earth aren't deserving of a punishment that severe. When you tell someone to go to hell, you essentially want them to suffer for all of eternity and to never stop feeling pain. Keep in mind that the concept of eternity is something that the human brain can't even comprehend. That's how long it is. I think most of us can agree that being at the DMV sucks. But imagine if you were stuck at the DMV for all of eternity. That's what hell is, but 1,000 times worse. I can't even wrap my head around the concept of infinite punishment, and when I think about it for too long, my head starts to hurt and I start feeling a little bit nauseous. And it's this concept alone that really does not resonate with me. Not only does the concept of God completely defy rationality and logical thinking, but it also seems very toxic from a psychological standpoint. Because all you're doing is using fear tactics and negative reinforcement to try to compel people to subscribe to your faith. And I won't lie, that kind of pisses me off. Why would an all-loving, benevolent God send his own creations to a place like hell to suffer for all of eternity if he created them that way? Oh, but it's not God's fault. He gives you free will. You choose your own fate, remember? Bullshit. What about all those times you tell me God has a plan or God knows all the answers? So how in the name of Bill Gates are you able to explain tragic events such as 9/11 and the Holocaust? Did God know they were going to happen and just let them happen anyway? Or better yet, did he want them to happen and actively make them take place himself? Sounds pretty fucked up to me. So does he only know some of the answers? Does he not know which path I'm going to take in the afterlife? If God does know everything, then he must be able to determine the outcome of our lives and whether or not we choose to accept him. And so he must know where we end up in the afterlife. And therefore, free will does not exist. If you're going to stick to a belief system, at least be consistent with it. And it's this concept alone that really was the final nail in the coffin for me. The one that made me assert the claim that I am not a religious person anymore. The idea that finite crimes somehow warrant infinite punishment. That's just not a fair or equitable system of morality, and it really doesn't fly with me. Even Hitler doesn't deserve to burn in hell for all of eternity, 100 years at most. But I'll save the bargaining. I've got more points to address. I know a lot of people think that a functioning or prosperous society can't exist without religion, but I happen to disagree. I actually think that religion serves to stunt the progress of society and to stagnate scientific innovation. It just encourages people to succumb to the same close-minded way of thinking and to deny the pursuit of knowledge in favor of an archaic and toxic belief system. For example, many medical procedures and surgeries, such as having an abortion, didn't exist for the longest time because religious people thought they were against God. And many people died as a result of this, which could have been avoided had they devoted more time, attention, and research into it. Thanks, religion. Yeah, believe it or not, there are still people out there who think that the world is 6,000 years old, or that homosexuality is a choice or some kind of act of rebellion against God. It just baffles me to see otherwise intelligent, well-informed, free-thinking people succumbing to this illogical and outdated tripe. And that's why I am not a theist. I'm an atheist. I'm also an agnostic. And yes, before you say it, there is a difference between atheism and agnosticism, but they're also not mutually exclusive terms. You see, the term agnostic refers to the concept of knowledge, and the term atheist refers to the concept of belief. So you can lack knowledge regarding God's existence, which technically applies to everyone, but you could also lack a belief in God, which makes you an atheist. So quit telling me that I have to choose between the two. I can be an agnostic atheist, which I am. And like I said, If you really think about it, everyone is an agnostic to some degree. I don't know. You don't know. Not even the most educated people in this world know. And we won't ever know until our life is over. Because whether you're religious or not, no one knows for certain whether or not God exists. There's just no way of being 100% sure until you die. Even I'm not 100% confident in my own beliefs. I still hold out a tiny bit of hope that there is a God out there. But I won't truly know until my life is over. But as usual, I digress. Like I said, if you happen to believe in God, I have nothing against you. I'm just explaining my side of the story. I'm just explaining the situation from my perspective, and I happen to find the idea of believing in a deity that I've never seen or met before to be completely ludicrous and not a very good foundation to set your beliefs on. Because really, what's the point of a finite secular life on Earth if there's already an infinite afterlife waiting there that's predetermined for you? Kinda makes this life seem a little bit less special, don't it? Because when you die and you find out that your beliefs were made up, will it really make all that time and energy spent worshiping and praying to your precious creator worth it? I know that I would be pretty upset about that, but I'm not waiting for death, because I know that there may or may not be something for me on the other side. So I try to enjoy every day that I have left on this earth, because I'm under the assumption that this is the only life I have, and I don't want to waste it hoping for something that may or may not exist. Ask yourself something. Do you subscribe to the laws of your faith because you genuinely love God and want to spend the rest of eternity with Him? Or because you're scared of the punishment that awaits you if you don't? Do you love God, or do you fear Him? I'll let you take a moment to ponder that one. It's kind of funny how human beings can agree on so many things, but it seems like we each have our own opinion about what happens to us after we die. Guess it's what makes us all so unique and special. But now let's talk about certain religions in particular and my personal experience with them. And it only seems fitting that we would start with the one that I was brought up into. If you really think about it, the entire mindset of Christianity is really quite toxic. It essentially states that human beings are born dirty or broken and need to be fixed by Jesus in order to achieve salvation. If they choose not to do this or disobey God's order in any way, then they have to spend the rest of eternity suffering in agony. Yeah, that's a great lesson to teach kids. I'm sorry, but what the fuck? What kind of all-loving being would do something like this? We always joke on people like Hitler or Kim Jong-un for having terrible morals, but maybe we should start taking a look at our Heavenly Father. Why would I ask for forgiveness from someone who made me to be a sinner in the first place and then punish me for not complying with his shitty rules? And more importantly, why would I brainwash my kids into thinking that if they don't accept Jesus, they'll be met with an eternity of burning in flames? Just the entire concept of Christianity is rooted in fear and guilt. And if you don't follow the rules, you'll burn forever. Yeah, that's a great lesson to be teaching the next generation. Oh my fucking god. And don't even get me started on Islam. Most religions I'm somewhat able to tolerate, but Islam is where I draw the line. Just an objectively misogynistic and oppressive system of beliefs that for some reason is supported by the far left community. Isn't that exactly what you guys stand against? Just to be clear, I don't hate Muslims, only Islam in and of itself. But that's all I have to say about that. Whether you're religious or not, I hope you did gain something from this video. Like I said, I wasn't trying to talk down to anyone or make them feel lesser for their beliefs. I was just trying to provide my input on the topic as it is something I'm passionate about. I've been an atheist ever since I was around the age of 15, and let me tell you that it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Because I've never felt so liberated and able to express my thoughts freely. I don't need religion to be happy or to give my life purpose. I have enough things in life already that give me purpose, and I don't require a 2,000-year-old book full of errors and inconsistencies in order to dictate my self-worth or my moral positioning. It may not be the happiest or the easiest route to take, but it's the one that makes the most sense to me. And if I have to burn for eternity just for being honest with myself, then so be it. I already know that I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this video from religious people who think that I'm some kind of immoral heathen trying to spread the message of Satan throughout the world. And to that I say, try not to be so close-minded, okay? Love thy neighbor. It's what God would want you to do. And like I said, try to keep it civil in the comments. That's all for this one. I wish both my believers and my non-believers a blessed day. Well, I guess it wouldn't be blessed if you're an atheist, but you get my point.